Uncle Trev and the Witch by Jack Lasenby. Who taught you to read hands? I asked Uncle Trev one day. Taught myself, he said, from that book by some chap with a funny name. So nobody taught you then? I asked. Well, he admitted, somebody did teach me a bit. In fact, I learned quite a bit from her. There was a witch lived up our road, next to me as a matter of fact. She taught me how to read hands. A witch? Yep, a witch. How did you know she was a witch? Because she was red-headed and double-jointed. Her knees and elbows bent backwards, so she looked a bit like an old pukeko. You know how Pook's legs sort of bend the wrong way when they walk? Yeah, I said. Well, she walked a bit like that. She was a wonderful woman, really. She could read your hand or tell your future from a pack of cards. She'd hang a needle or a wedding ring over a clutch of eggs, tell you which ones would hatch out hens, which ones were cockerels. She could pick the best pup out of a litter, cure a sick cow, or get a dying horse back on its feet. The pigs used to get uneasy when she was around, though. They'd prick up their ears and squeal. Why? Well, your pig's an intelligent creature, you know, said Uncle Trev. Have you ever noticed he's the only animal who can see the wind blow? And can see witches when they're invisible, too. Is that true? I asked. Would I be telling you if it wasn't? Uncle Trev asked. He looked at me, shook his head sadly. It's just, I've never seen a witch, I said apologetically. Uncle Trev rubbed his hand on the top of his head. That old witch put a curse on my hair, he said. That's why I went bald. Why did she do that? Just something she reckoned I did, of course. I never did it. Well, what was it? I asked. Can't remember now, said Uncle Trev, but I know darn well I didn't do it. But once someone's practiced witchcraft on you, though, you never quite get over it. My hair's still falling out. He rubbed his hand over his bald head once again. Ah, now I remember. She reckoned I chopped down one of her trees. That's what it was. As if I'd chopped down one of her trees. So many of them on my farm, they'd just fall down or blow down themselves. What would I want to go and chop down one of her trees for? Then, of course, there's all the earthquakes we got on the farm. They knock over a few trees too. Wind blows off the hills, blows down some each winter. Then every time the river changes course, tumbles a few trees down its banks. But I've got trees growing everywhere. Started planting them years ago. They're big trees now, many of them. Anyway, that old witch next door, she accused me of chopping down one of her trees. Next thing I knew, my hair was falling out. How did you know she made it fall out? Well, it didn't start falling out till she accused me of chopping down her tree, said Uncle Trev. Anyway, I fixed her. She'd been teaching me to read hands, and it turned out I was better at it than her. I told her several things that were going to happen to her that I'd seen on her hand. And what sort of things? Well, I read on her hand she was going to get rheumatism and go bandy-legged, and that got her a bit scared, I suppose. She must have put a general curse on my place, because the next thing I knew, I noticed old Tip was leaving hairs all over my chair and on the foot of my bed. I saw he was going a bit thin on top too. Then the hair fell out of old Toot's head, my old horse. My bull went bald, the boar pigs lost their bristles, and the wool started coming off the rams. You've never seen such a farm. The wind blew and piled horsehair, pig's bristles, sheep's wool, cat fluff, cow hair, dog hair, and my hair against the fences. Even the feathers fell off my roosters. What did you do? I asked. I was at my wit's end, said Uncle Trev. First thing I did was make hats for all the male creatures on my farm, because they were all looking so embarrassed. Well, you know what you'd feel like, losing all your hair or your feathers off the top of your head. Then the Rawleys man came to the door with his suitcase full of ointments and pills and potions, and I spent a fortune on hair restorers. I nearly wore out my hands rubbing it into the scalps of all the animals. I'd start off in the morning with old Tip, then old Toot, and then the rams. By the time I'd caught the bull, roped and thrown him, rubbed his head with hair restorer, run down the old tomcat and rubbed his head, and done all the roosters and ganders, it's time to go to bed. I'd never worked so hard. I stared at Uncle Trev. You're still bald, I said. Of course I am. There was nobody to rub hair restorer into my scalp, and I was too tired after rubbing it in on all the creatures. What happened? I asked him. Uncle Trev shook his head. That old witch, he said. She must have taken some of her own bald-making magic by mistake, because all of her long hair fell out. Every last red hair of it. Her red eyebrows fell off, red eyelashes, even the little red moustache she had. They all fell off. She was bald as an empty bottle. The witch was bald? Yep, said Uncle Trev. And I let everybody know I'd done it. Went out and stood amongst the pigs. As soon as I saw they were looking at the wind coming across the paddock, I whispered into it. I made the witch bald with my magic. The wind carried my words through the whole district so everyone heard them. The witch heard them too. And the next thing I knew, she'd sold up her farm next door and moved. What happened to the creatures? I asked. Old Tip's got plenty of hair on his head. Oh, all their hair grew back again. The wool grew back on the rams, feathers grew back on the roosters. They were all okay, except for my old bull. What happened to him? Oh, his hair grew back on his head all right. He looked a bit strange without any. Can you imagine? A bald bull? Well, it grew back, like I said, but it came in red. As red as the witch's hair had been. The rest of him sort of blackish grey. You know what a Jersey bull looks like. Oh yeah, I said. And your hair doesn't grow back? Not exactly, said Uncle Trev. I don't think that old witch ever forgave me for becoming better at reading hands than she was. I think she must have kept the curse on my hair after she lifted it off the animals. Anyhow, I suppose I've got used to it now. Did you ever see the witch again, Uncle Trev? Oh, now and again. I'll see her at a stock sale, and she still drops in for a cup of tea and a chat about the weather from time to time. She's given up reading hands, she says. She makes quite a nice bit of money selling tips for the races, predicting the county council elections. She'll keep the rain off when you're making hay if you pay her enough. She always goes out and has a yarn to that red-headed bull of mine when she's here. She always gives his head a good scratch with those double-jointed fingers of hers. He seems to like it. Funny thing, that. Why? Well, I wouldn't go near him without a pitchfork and old Tip. But it's stranger than that. Each time she calls, the old bull's hair seems to go even brighter red on top of his head. I think it's got something to do with my hair falling out. You see, as his gets longer and thicker, mine gets thinner and greyer. Uncle Trev rubbed his hand over his head again. Oh, look at that, he said. Another hair fallen out. At this rate, there'll be soon none left. Still, she did teach me how to read hands. Oh, and there was another thing she taught me I'd never forgotten. What was that? I asked him. Well, you know my place is out under the hills. When the wind comes bouncing down off them, it blows the smoke down the chimney and into the room. Oh, yeah? Well, said Uncle Trev, she was there once when it happened. She stopped it, just like that. How? She spat in the fire, said Uncle Trev. Now, whenever the wind puffs down the chimney and blows the smoke into the room, just spit in the fire. It stops it like a charm. You should try it sometime, he said. When your chimney's smoking, spit into the fire. Though I wouldn't advise you try it, though, he said, when your mother's around. At least, he said, don't go telling her I put you up to it. After he'd gone home to his farm, I asked Mum if she'd ever seen the witch who used to live next door to Uncle Trev. Witch? Mum snorted. Is that what he's calling her now? I wouldn't give her the time of day, the brazen hussy. But she was no witch. That woman wanted to marry your uncle, and run their 2 farms together, but you know him. He's such a confirmed old bachelor. She gave up on him, and after years, moved across the Waikato, bought a farm by another man she fancied. I believe she's done quite well for herself too, which is more than you can say for that uncle of yours. Did Uncle Trev go bald after she left? I asked. My mother thought. Yeah, I believe you're right, she said. He was just beginning to lose his hair about the time she left. That might have been what put her off him, of course. It's years ago now. Why do you ask? Oh, nothing, I said. I just wondered.